Okay, in this video we're going to look at some of the key things, some of the key infrastructure policies from this year's budget, and also look at how to answer some of the questions related to some of the tax cuts we looked at in the previous video. So if you look at this, basically this is just showing you the percentage of Australians that will fit into each tax bracket after each change. So at the moment, around 53% of Australians earn an income which puts them in the 32.5 cent tax bracket. With the changes, what's likely to happen is by 24-25, more people will be pushed into the 37 cent tax rate with less people in this bracket. But by the time we get to the 2024-25, when we change the 32.5 cent tax bracket from 41 to 200,000, 73% of Australians are going to fit into that tax bracket, with only a small proportion, only 19%, so those that are earning less than 41,000, and your really rich people earning over 200,000, not part of that bracket. So it's moving to a very proportional tax system where people are paying a similar amount of tax as a percentage each dollar, regardless of what they earn between $40,000 and $200,000. So in relation to explaining how these tax cuts can impact the goals, but firstly we're going to look at how the government reduced income taxes in 2018-2019. So within this question, when you get the word income tax, that can refer to company or progressive income taxes. And in this year's budget, the government has made cuts to both income and company taxes. So as part of the 10-year enterprise tax plan, the tax rate for companies has been reduced for 27.5% for all businesses earning less than $50 million. It's important that you include the change in your answer, not just saying it's 27.5%. Make it really clear that that rate is for any business earning less than $50 million. Eventually, that should say 26-27, that's wrong. It's going to go down to 25% in 2026-2027. On top of that, they've also extended the accelerated depreciation allowances, which means you don't have to pay, you get to claim back tax on asset purchases up to $20,000, which is good, which means you can reduce your overall tax liability and pay less income tax. But the key thing you want to talk about in this question is the changes to income tax. And really all you need to talk about is the changes that occurred this year. So as part of the 7-year enterprise tax plan, those that are middle and low income earners will receive a tax offset of $530, and that will be combined with an increase in the 32.5% tax bracket from $87,000 to $90,000, which will mean that you don't have to start paying 37 cents tax until you earn the higher rate, which is an encouragement to people to join the workforce, so it can be linked to supply, but mainly it's going to boost aggregate demand. These future changes, this evening out of the tax bracket from 40,000 to 200,000, doesn't need to be talked about because it's about the future, but you can include it if you would like. Explain how the changes to the company tax rate and explain the changes to the company tax rate, and how this is likely to impact on economic growth and full employment in both the short and long term. So 4 marks. Your first mark is for explaining what's happened to company tax rates. So reduce the company tax rate for businesses with a turnover of less than 50 million. Sorry for all the mistakes. And that will be progressively lowered to 25% by 26-27. Okay, in the short term, the benefits for that is that it leads to businesses, or it should lead to businesses investing. It creates more investment in new plant and technology because businesses get to keep a larger share of their profits and they've got more cash flow, they're more willing to invest. That increased investment leads to jobs and reduces the rate of unemployment. So short term, there's more demand, unemployment should go down because of the increase in jobs from investment, and cyclical unemployment in the economy should move closer towards that 4 to 5% target range with no cyclical unemployment. In the long term, so again, 1 mark for explaining the change to company taxes, 1 mark for explaining, or 1.5 sort of for the short-term impact on investment and jobs. In the long term, we benefit because the increased investment spending on plant and equipment should help to increase productivity. So as businesses become more productive, it should reduce inflationary pressures, and that will create lower prices in the economy, should help to boost our international competitiveness and create more demand for our exports and more jobs in the economy, again reducing cyclical unemployment. So the lower prices are the key thing in the long term from increased productivity, and you want to link that to our increased international competitiveness. In terms of lower company tax rates and inflation, what you're really saying is that they're different in the short and the long term. So again, explain what the government's done, change that to 50 million, and then talk about how the investment in the short term can create more aggregate demand, it can boost investment and consumption because it creates jobs, and that can lead to some demand pull inflation. But in the long term, the idea of lower company taxes to stimulate investment spending on new plant, equipment and technology, which should reduce cost-push inflation in the long term. Okay, second policy. So one policy you can talk about for low inflation is the lower company tax rates or the accelerated depreciation allowances. Both of them lead to new technology and new investment in infrastructure, which should help to reduce prices because we're more productive. The other main policy reducing inflation that we're going to look at is the infrastructure package. We'll look at the schools package when we look at supply side policy, but you need to know a couple of things about what's happening as part of the infrastructure package. So infrastructure can be linked to growth, employment or inflation, and basically they've implemented a whole range of policies. My suggestion, you know a couple from last year and a couple from this year, so 3 or 4 max. And some of the key policies they've implemented is the rail network between the CBD and the airport. So some of these you may already know, which is good. You can use them. There's the North-East link of 1.75 billion. In Queensland, they built a new Bruce Highway worth 3.3 billion. But the three I'd probably talk about, if you're limiting it down to 3 policies, one, the Melbourne Airport Rail Link, which costs $5 billion to connect the CBD. 2, from last year, the Brisbane Inland Rail Project, which is designed to create more rail between Brisbane and Melbourne and therefore take trucks off the road and allow for more goods to be transported through train. And thirdly, they've established this urban congestion fund. And this is really specific and it's also part of this year's budget, which is designed for policies in the future that will help to decrease congestion and improve traffic safety. So the idea of this fund is for them to develop funds that they can then use to solve some of these issues related to congestion and traffic safety, which will hopefully help to create less congestion in the future. So in terms of just breaking it down into existing and new projects, last year we had the Brisbane Inland Rail Network. They put $5.3 billion towards the West Sydney Airport as another key thing to help more with air travel. And the ring road, the $500 million ring road, or the Bruce Highway are policies that I'd probably encourage you to talk about. So choose a couple of these, refer to your notes, get used to using them. And then this year they've combined that with the $1 billion Urban Congestion Fund is the main thing that they've done, as well as $3.5 billion towards the North Australian package. In total this year they've had $25 billion put towards infrastructure, and that's combined with policies in the past that have also been used for infrastructure spending. But here's just a quote from Michael McCormack. He's promised record spend on infrastructure, including $5 billion for the rail link from the Melbourne Airport to the CBD. There's $3.3 billion going towards the Bruce Highway. There's $1.5 billion for Northern Australian roads, as well as another $1 billion for the M1 Pacific Highway. Again, choose a couple of key policies. I suggest the Urban Congestion Fund in combination with spending in Northern Australia. And then last year we've got the Inland Rail Network is your main one. Sorry, this one here up the top. And then one other policy as well from last year. In terms of infrastructure's impact on growth, employment and inflation, short term it can boost growth because it leads to more G2 spending and private investment if they're done by private companies. This will help to boost the demand for labour, increase incomes and increase consumption spending. In the long term, infrastructure boosts our productive capacity and allows for non-inflationary growth. So it helps to reduce bottlenecks, reduce traffic jams, get trucks off the road, and that helps to boost productivity and lower petrol costs. That all leads to increased productivity and more output per unit of input, which should help to decrease inflationary pressures. So in the long term, it's good for inflation. So again, summarising, one policy that's likely to lead to strong and sustainable growth is the increase in infrastructure spending. Define the goal of strong and sustainable growth, the fastest growth without inflation, environmental or external pressures. They're spending $70 billion on infrastructure, including $24.5 billion this year. Provide some examples, e.g. the Melbourne Airport Rail Link, the North-East Link and the Bruce Highway. They have also announced $1 billion to establish the Urban Congestion Fund. That's a really key policy because that's going to reduce traffic congestion and improve efficiency when needed. These policies, along with the Inland Rail Network, will help to boost economic growth. I wouldn't talk about this is probably too much. Short term, it's going to lead to increased consumption and investment spending, boosting demand for labour and incomes. And then in the long term, it leads to an increase in our productive capacity, reduces bottlenecks, reduces traffic jams, and boosts productivity so that we can produce more. 2 policies designed to achieve price stability. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but 2 policies you could talk about. First, define the goal of price stability. 2 to 3% inflation over the course of the business cycle. And then 2 key policies I'd be using are the depreciation allowances, because we'll invest in new machinery and capital, and that can be used to increase our productivity. Make it clear that that can lead to inflation in the short term, but long term it's likely to lead to lower costs of production. And secondly, the infrastructure spending. So the spending on the rail link, the spending on the Brisbane inland rail network, spending on the Bruce Highway is all likely to reduce congestion, boost our productive capacity, and reduce capacity constraints in the